I think we can begin now. Vivian, whenever you're ready to present our host and our topics for today.
Thank you, Jimena. Welcome, everybody. Today we will be speaking about virtual payments today. To begin, we will be providing some important information before the presentation. Please do keep in mind we do have an allotted time of 60 minutes. Your line will be muted. We are recording this webinar as it will be sent out after the webinar has finished. As Jimena mentioned, there will be a chat available to ask any questions, and we will also be hosting a Q&A at the end of the webinar. Your feedback is important as we will be sending out a survey to ask any questions or any future feedback we will be taking into consideration for future webinars. And lastly, we will also be sending out post-event highlights to highlight significant takeaways of today's webinar. Our presenters today are Warren Kendridge, who is Head of Sales for Sabre Virtual Payments, and Erica Stewart, who is VP E-Commerce of ConnexPay. Next, we will be having 3 poll questions to evaluate the general knowledge of virtual payments.
Our first question is, are you using virtual cards today? So if you please just ask yes or no, it's fairly easy, and submit your answer so we can have assess your knowledge on the product. Okay, 60% of our attendees are not using virtual cards today, so we should move on with the next question. Yeah, it's increasing to 67%, so we should take into consideration that a high percent of people don't use virtual cards today. So the next question is, how would you describe your understanding on the virtual cards world? Low, medium, or strong? Okay, really low. Oh, no, it's between really low and strong, which is okay. Next question is your agency a merchant of record today? And the options are yes or no. No, it's a high no. Okay, Ian.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Today's agenda, we will be speaking about virtual payments, Sabre Virtual Payments, ConnexPay, and lastly, hosting a Q&A. So our first presenter will be Warren. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you very much, ladies. Much appreciated. And thank you, everybody, for making the time to join us today. As Vivian mentioned, my name is Warren Kendridge, and I head up the sales team at Sabre Virtual Payments. I come from an issuer background as well as a GDS acquisition background, so quite familiar with your agency environment and, of course, payments being my kind of key role today. So yeah, thank you for those polls. It was good for us to sort of understand what the knowledge level is in terms of the audience, so that when we talk through the program and virtual cards, that we sort of can reiterate certain areas that might make I guess deep dive into certain areas that will be more helpful to you to sort of understand what we're talking about. So with that said, we're going to start off with an introduction to virtual payments, because for those that don't know about virtual payments or why they exist, how they're being used, and the reasons that everybody's kind of using these today worldwide. So with that said, let me go into it. Right. So what is a virtual card? A virtual card number, also known as a VCN, this is the common term globally, is essentially a 16-digit MasterCard or Visa card number. In a virtual card world, there's a set parameter or parameters that are created against every single payment that is made. And generally speaking, every time you make a payment, you would use one of these virtual cards, either automatically or through the portal. And we'll talk a bit more about how that works and how that looks. But if you can imagine a payment today that you would normally use, you could reference a normal physical credit card, because as you can see there, it is essentially a virtual card number is processed the same way as any other card. The difference, obviously, that it's virtual, it's not a physical card. So when you're creating a card of this nature, you're creating it towards the payment that you wish to make. So, for example, if you're paying airlines today, and you perhaps have an airline that you need to pay tomorrow, the airfare is potentially $100, you would create this virtual card number with $100 on the card, and you would create it specifically for airline payments, and you would make this card available for tomorrow. So that if, for example, someone tries to use this card for $101 or $200, whatever, and they potentially try to use the card before tomorrow, or if you allow it, you can extend the date to a certain range. If they use the card after that range, the card will simply not be authorized. So it's essentially a way to protect the business in terms of the payments the business is making. And this can work in all different kinds of merchants and in different kinds of environments. But yes, the point of the virtual card number is to be able to pay your merchants with the protection of the virtual cards, which comes with a back-end protection over and above that, which we'll talk a little bit about it. But the point is you create one virtual card number with a unique card number that is generated every single time you create the virtual card, and you're making that payment specifically for the payment that you wish to make. And of course, the next time you want to make a payment, you then generate a new card and you send that card for that payment. These are all parameters that you create are all fixed or created against the configurations that you would set. So if you want the card to be available tomorrow only, you'd make the card available just for tomorrow. If you want to set a week parameter for that card to be allowed to be authorized for that week, you would then set it for that parameter. So these parameters can be defined at your leisure, and of course they can be further defined against the actual merchants themselves, so you can categorize these payments to airlines or to hotels, to car rentals and things like that. So it becomes very interesting in terms of who you're paying and how you set these up to make sure that you have the right payment methods to the right merchants. And there are significant benefits around virtual cards, which we'll address, but that is essentially what a virtual card number actually is. Sorry, my screen's not moving. There we go. Seems to be a bit of a delay there. So today you're obviously using certain payment methods, and traditionally speaking, these are either bank transfers through the airline settlement plan, which in America is the ARC, which you all probably know well, and of course, plastic cards. So virtual cards, from our perspective, tick all the boxes from a payments perspective. And I'll start from the bottom. If you can look at the sort of the table on the right side, in terms of automation, this product is integrated into Sabre. So you'd be able to, oh, it's moving itself. Someone pressing it, sorry guys. Okay, I think it stopped. Apologies, everybody. So yes, it was integrated into Sabre, and we'll show you a little demo on how that looks. But essentially, it's one extra entry in your booking process, and you would automatically be able to add the virtual card number as a form of payment in the PNR. So that's massively important from an automation perspective. There are, of course, APIs that can be talked about upon request, but ultimately you can go onto the portal that is Sabre Virtual Payments, and you can generate a card to make a payment to anywhere around the world. When you talk about bank transfers, there's very limited kind of automation. You have to kind of log in, make the payments, and there's very little protection around bank transfers. In fact, bank transfers are probably the highest risk of a payment that you would ever make. There's no rewards against a transfer like of that nature. If there's any fraudulent activity, you don't get your money back. And the reconciliation behind these kinds of transfers can be quite poor in the data that you receive. And ultimately, when you're paying cross-border, you don't really know essentially always who you're paying. So I would say bank transfers are the highest risk with the least amount of rewards. And they're the best for virtual cards because it's a cash payment, and you'll be able to push that cash into a virtual card account to start making virtual card payments. The airline settlement plan, on the other hand, is probably a way of doing an automatic sort of form of payment. There is very little to worry about in terms of cross-border, but in terms of reconciliation, you're reliant on the report that you receive from the IATA. And of course, if any of these payments that you make to sort of airlines and such, if there's any fraudulent activity, you're at the mercy of the merchant to get your money back. So there's very little ways to get your money back if anything had to happen when you pay through ARC. And the potential for rebate is next to nothing. So I don't think you get any kind of rewards for doing that other than the actual cycle, the credit line that you might get from ARC. And then lastly, the plastic cards. It's probably the only other form of rewards that are in the play at the moment. So you get point systems with plastic cards. Those point systems are generally at the mercy of the platform. So you would, get points that you can buy a TV or something like that, and whatever they allow you to buy. With virtual cards, you are getting a rebate on every single transaction that you make. There's a percentage of the transaction that you would get back, and that would be determined by the issuer, in this case, ConnexPay, and that'll be money back into your account to do with whatever that you need to do in terms of your business flow. So it's going to go against your, towards your P&L, and therefore, so it either can go into your actual virtual card account or into your business bank account like that. Another great thing about virtual cards is the protection it offers, and I'll let Erica talk more on that. But essentially saying that if anything had to happen, there is a chargeback scheme in the back end that you wouldn't have to worry about fighting with merchants to get your money backs. And we have a little piece more on that to talk about. And then the amount of data that you get back from plastic cards and any other form of payment it's just generally quite poor, whereas virtual cards, it's what we call third level data. So you get very rich information back, and it's more than you would ever need. And there's ways to actually enhance that data so that you have all the information you could possibly ever need to reconcile your business accounts every month or every week. And then the great thing about virtual cards is that you can pay anywhere around the world, and you're completely protected for those payments that you want to make. So kind of risk-free, lots of earning potential. You can do things manually, automatically, and benefit from some great reconciliation data. And I hope that this allows me to move my screen. I believe it's because I'm taking control of someone else's screen that it's massively delayed. There we go. So we're just going to have to wait a few seconds, Erica, between slides. So just to cover this off quickly, this is sort of the stakeholders in the virtual travel payments world. Obviously, you as the customer being the one who would generate the virtual cards, you would essentially pay merchants with those virtual cards, which can be any travel and entertainment type merchants, being airlines that are traditional, low-cost carriers, hotels, car hires, rail, cruise lines, you name it. There are some cases that you can pay things like Google Ads and these sort of things with certain payment products. But yeah, ultimately, we're looking towards to pay travel and entertainment. Then, of course, you have your acquiring bank. It's the money that helps you take money from customers. In this case, it would be ConnexPay offering that service. And then, of course, issuing the virtual cards, which is from the financial technology business or institution, or the issuing bank, as we call it, which in this case is also ConnexPay behind the scenes with Sabre's platform helping generate those virtual cards. And lastly, the schemes are, but the most important part of it really is that they provide all the products that all the issuers are using to make payments. So in this case, we're going to be referring mostly to Visa and MasterCard, but there are other schemes that can be referenced if it's ever of interest. Well, that went quickly. Over to Erica.
Thank you, Warren. So as Warren mentioned, you do have the ability with virtual cards to do a chargeback. This was super important during COVID. I know I'm not telling you all anything that you weren't very involved with, but during COVID, as you know, it was very difficult to get money back with airlines. Of course, your customers that had booked with you, they wanted their money back immediately, and you had to wait on the airlines to get that money back. And it was very difficult during that time to get that. With the virtual cards, you do have the ability to charge back to the airlines, the hotels, the cruises, whoever it is that you're paying, if something isn't right. So you can create a chargeback against those virtual cards and get your money back, and then get your money back to the consumer traveler much quicker. With ConnexPay, all you have to do, if there's an instance in which you've issued a virtual card and you need to issue a chargeback, you would alert us and you would dispute the charge, and then we would handle the rest. At ConnexPay, we do have a full chargeback management system to use on the front end, as well as on the back end. We have a team to help you fight and get your money back. So the chargeback would initially be disputed at the agency level, and then we would take it on your behalf from there. So the other stages of chargeback are listed out there, but really all you need to be worried about is letting ConnexPay know, or Sabre Virtual Payments know, that you want to issue a chargeback or a dispute on a virtual card, and then we can handle the rest on your behalf from there. We do have a high chargeback rate in which we win. And so that is always very important that you get your money back in a quick manner. So, awesome. Thank you, Warren. Also a merchant of record. So it seems that not a lot of you all are acting as merchant of record today. This is one of the benefits of ConnexPay. We were built specifically with the travel industry in mind to be able to help with the pay in as well as the pay out. Why it's super important that we're able to help you become merchant of record is if you are utilizing Sabre Virtual Payments and ConnexPay to issue virtual cards out to your suppliers, in a traditional model, you would have to pre-fund that. With ConnexPay, we're able to help you become merchant of record, which would then in turn be able to allow you to use those funds to issue out to pay the suppliers in that way. So there's no line of credit that you would need. The incoming funds are going to help you to fund those outgoing payments to your suppliers. With ConnexPay, we do give you immediate access to your funds when you become merchant of record with ConnexPay. It helps you to be able to increase your cash flow and to help you to control your prices and your margins. When you're acting not as merchant of record and you're using ARC, if you want to pass along a markup or a commission to your traveler, there's going to have to be two ways that you are charging the consumer. So you would have the airline to charge for the package or the hotel, and then they would have a second charge for you if there's a commission or markup. That also allows the consumers, the travelers, to a lot of times issue a chargeback on you as the agency. With ConnexPay, that is completely transparent. The consumer's only being charged for one transaction, and then you can retain your commission and your markup, and then you issue a virtual card out to the supplier. As Warren mentioned, when you're not acting as merchant of record and there are any disputes on the transaction, you're at the mercy of the airline to get that money back. When you're acting as merchant of record, you have the insight and the visibility into that to be able to help your consumer to get their money back quicker. As well as you control the whole consumer experience. As an agency, I'm sure one of your goals is to have repeat customers. You want them to have a good customer service experience in which you would be able to have them come back time and time again to book packages through you or flights or whatever it may be. So acting as merchant of record also gives you control into that consumer experience. Also, I know there's a lot of it's okay. There's a lot of cost that is involved with becoming merchant of record. Since ConnexPay is able to facilitate the front end payment as well as the back end payment, we're able to cut down on the costs. Typically, when you do become merchant of record with other providers, they set you at a fixed rate. With ConnexPay, we do it with an interchange plus basis points model to help control the costs on the front end, so that we can help you offset that front end costs with the back end rebate earning potential that you have with the virtual cards that you're able to issue through ConnexPay and Sabre Virtual Payments. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Erica. I was so we're gonna go between Eric and I a little bit and explaining sort of why that is, which is really brings me to this slide here. So Sabre Virtual Payments has been operating in the virtual card space with Confirma for many, many years, and historically, you know, reliant on the Confirma Pay technology as a separate business. Late last year, Sabre acquired Confirma Pay as a business that we do, by the way, treat agnostically. However, they are now a Sabre-owned company. And after the acquisition, MasterCard themselves as well bought shares into Confirma, which just sort of gives you an idea about the sort of level that we're talking about. And I guess, you know, in terms of all the parties involved, how strong we are in the virtual payment space today. And then, you know, Pay being one of our leading issuers globally, and working with them in the US, given their market presence in the US and their business model in terms of both money in and money out. So there's a lot more to talk about than just the virtual card issuance, really being able to give you the end-to-end solution kind of off the shelf to solve for anything that you might need in the payment space. So together, we're providing a one-stop shop. Sabre Virtual Payments is essentially the technology, the platform, and the integrated solution into the GDS. And behind the scenes, everything is ConnexPay that does all the card generation, provides you all the products and services, and ultimately will be able to bring the acquiring services to you as well, which will be treated essentially a little bit separated. But you know, from here, I think once we finish with this presentation, for those that are interested, we'll be able to just contact us, and we'll be able to give you the next level, a deeper dive into any questions or information that you might still have. But hopefully, we can answer everything today. So in terms of product, so we have they have pretty much all the products. So, you know, in terms of MasterCard and Visa card products, in the US, you would generally use what they call a corporate purchasing card. And what's nice about that product is it has the highest level of interchange. So if for those who don't know what interchange means, it is essentially the cost of the card to the merchant. So with an interchange of around, I think it's 265 on the corporate purchasing card in America, it is the highest level that merchants are paying globally, and that is specific to MasterCard and Visa cards. You do have other products like Amex, which is a lot more expensive, by the way, to merchants. So given that I'm saying it's the highest interchange, it doesn't mean it's the most expensive to the airlines or the merchants in general. The point of it, though, is that the higher the interchange, the better your rebate potential is, because ultimately the rebates come from the interchange, if you haven't guessed already. So with the level of the higher, you know, the higher percentage per product would be the higher percentage that you would get back. I'm saying that because there are a range of other products, as you can see here. There are several different kinds of product levels of interchange, and they just essentially just go down from a 2.65% all the way down to 1% or even less. And that is helping for mostly outside of the US, I would say, in terms of acceptance issues, surcharges to low-cost carriers, you know, where some airlines in Europe would actually prefer to have a different level of interchange that they would accept, rather than the US quite broadly accepting the corporate purchasing card. So you're in a good position in America to be able to maximize your revenues. And the other good thing about ConnexPay, actually, and I'm sure that we'll touch more on it, but there's a BIN rotation, and it's something that I haven't mentioned yet. The BIN is the first 6 digits of your unique card number. So the unique card number is in fact 10 digits of the 16 digits that you would, you know, be generating every time. So your first 6 digits will be the static, but there are 60 versions of that static number. I don't want to complicate things too much, but the rest of the 10 digits would obviously not be reused. So there will always be a new unique number, with the first 6 digits being the same. And ConnexPay is the only issuer that I know that has over 60 of these available. You usually find between 5 and 10, different bin numbers. So 60 is a massive number, and what's great about it is it's automatically rotating. So when you make a payment to merchants that are maybe monitoring cards and things like that, they will almost not even notice, because these bins are just changing all the time, and it always looks like it's a new card, and it's a very good way of making payments successfully all over the world. So how do you do this today with us? It's essentially two ways. I've mentioned it before. There is the WebPay portal. You would have a login, and you would essentially log into what is the Confirmer platform, and you would have your ConnexPay accounts available there. You'll be able to then simply generate a card for, say, air or hotel, and you would put very limited amounts of information that's necessary there, being the amount, the date range, and so on. And you would generate a card within seconds, and you'd be able to email that card number to your merchants. That's the most manual way of doing things. Then, of course, the Sabre GDS integration, I think, is really most important for this group, in that you can then also just, with one extra entry, as I've mentioned, create a virtual card that gets automatically added to the form of payment as a VCN into your PNR. This is a quick video that'll show you exactly what I've just mentioned. I'm hesitant to press another arrow, but let's see if it plays. And there we go. Perfect. So this just gives you a sense of how it looks, and I'm sure this all the agencies on the call today would probably know more about this than anybody else here. But I can tell you that from our perspective, the VCN Sabre Air 4 is Sabre's entry in the GDS as a test entry. You would have your own agency entry that you would be able to populate. You can key the entry in there to make it simpler, or you would just know your entry as simple as that. And that would be essentially the only step, right, into the booking process, as I've said. But what they're doing on the screen here is sort of showing you the information that you're getting back. And what's good is that you will eventually see a masked card number in the PNR. There's also something to point out. There's a deployment ID number at the bottom there. That's what you would go into your reports to actually find the payment if you ever had to. Generally not necessary, but yeah, there's obviously, for every payment that you make, there's a deployment ID. And there you go. The form of payment is a masked card number, just to show how quick and simple that was. And you didn't have to obviously put up the information. It would have just done that automatically. So in terms of the reporting, as I've said, you have your third level data, generally speaking, with virtual cards, regardless. But for Confirmer, there is a specific report. It's a settlement report. You can also see all the cards that have been generated in this report. You essentially could log into your normal portal, and you would have this report in another option just by selecting Snap within your portal, and you'd be able to view your data that way. It can be extracted. It can be made available in SFTP if necessary. And what's nice is that you can add over 40 custom reference fields. So if you wanted any additional pieces of information in your reporting, you can just add them there, make them mandatory. They would require intervention in terms of populating those fields, but you can specify what they need to be. And that'll be then visible in the report. There are other reports that you'll have available with ConnexPay as well, and I'll let Erica touch on those.
Awesome.
And with
Thank
that
you,
said,
Warren.
over to you, Erica.
Thanks, Warren. So as a backup to what Warren was just saying about the reporting, obviously you'll have your Sabre reporting, you'll have Confirmer reporting, and there is ConnexPay reporting too. One of the things Warren mentioned earlier is the fact that with virtual cards, there's a lot of data that you can pull through, and this is just showing the richness of the data that we have available. Any information that you pass along through to ConnexPay is reportable data. So we can report on a traveler's name, a PNR number, a supplier ID. There's a bevy of different things that we can pull from and report on. This is just showing a daily accounting report that you're going to receive each and every day from ConnexPay. So this is going to show a complete snapshot of what you did in the previous day. It's going to give you your prior day starting cash balance. It's going to show you all the sales that came through, whether they're card, ACH. We do have a lot of different payment options that you can accept as well as send out through ConnexPay, which we'll touch on a later slide. But it's going to give you a complete overview and snapshot of everything that you did in the day before, from the sales side as well as the purchase side, which is what we call it for the acquiring versus the issuing at ConnexPay. It shows you the start as well as the end and everything in between. Again, those will be coming to you on a daily basis. It'll give you the summary, then it's going to give you another tab. So whereas you can see all of the detail from the previous day. You also have access to pull this through our portal. We call it Bridge. You can do ad hoc reporting as well as any custom reporting. So the richness of the data that you're going to receive is going to be very robust. It's a little bit, it can be quite overwhelming, the amount of data that you can pull. All right, next slide, if you don't mind, Warren. So this slide gives a really good overview because it could have been quite confusing us going back and forth between merchant of record and virtual card issuing. So this gives you a really good overview of what the payment flow looks like with ConnexPay. So as you start from the left to the right, it's going to show you the progression of the payment as you receive them from your traveler to when you pay your supplier. So if you are accepting through traditional online or offline methods, we can help facilitate those either way. So ConnexPay will take in the card details that you present to us, whether it be either through a traveler presenting those on a website or you sending a link to a traveler for them to manually input themselves. The first line of defense that we have is a product that's a third-party fraud analysis. We partner with a company called Count. That's Count with the K. They're a member of Equifax, so they're a very large, reputable company. We provide that to all of our customers at no cost because it's super important to us as well as to you that we keep chargebacks as low as possible. So the way Count works, it's an omni score between 0 and 100, and you set your appetite for that. We typically say to set it at a 60 or above. It works like grades did back in school. The higher the score, the less likely it is to be fraud. The lower the score, the more likely it is to be fraud. It's looking at a lot of different data. It's looking at IP addresses. It's looking at AVS to do address verification. It's looking at lots of different data elements to return that score to give you a validity of that charge. If it passes through Count, then we go ahead and we take those funds immediately. In this example, it's $1,000 that your traveler booked with you. We give you real-time access to that. The actual booking is only $950, so there's a $50 commission or markup in this example on the screen, which you would retain. And then you have the ability to spin up that virtual card in real time. So as soon as we take the funds from the traveler, if you need to pay the airline, you can do that in real time. Warren also mentioned that we can set parameters as far as pay at a future date or don't pay until the next day. Whatever that is, you give us the details and we take those instructions and we issue virtual cards based off of that. But this it's all in real time, immediate access to funds, lower cost, and a virtual card to be spun up and sent out to your supplier as needed. Next slide, please. Thank you. So hopefully, as you can see, ConnexPay is a bit of a different payments provider than what a normal payments provider would be, because we do have the ability to take in the funds from the traveler as well as issue out the funds to the supplier. So what we've done is we've taken what are traditionally multiple providers and provided it into one seamless payment flow. The benefit of that is you're working with one provider. So in this case, our partnership would be you're working with both ConnexPay and Sabre Virtual Pay. But it helps so that you're not having to go out to multiple means to get the answers that you need. We can give it to you in one payment flow, to where we can do the merchant acquiring as well as the virtual card issuing. But if the virtual card is all that it makes sense for you and your agency, we can also do just that piece, and help you with that. As Warren mentioned, with the issuing of virtual cards, we do have relationships with both Visa and MasterCard, as well as those 60 bins that we have access to. The benefit of that is truly the acceptance from suppliers. It's helping a more widely accepted rate from your suppliers, as well as just growing that out. So while we have 60 today, we're always growing that number of bins, as well as the currencies that we're able to settle in. We can do USD, we can do Canadian dollars, GBP, and Euro, as well as through our MasterCard wholesale bin that Warren mentioned much earlier in the presentation. We can take the funds in any of those 4 currencies, and then we can settle into the local currency of your supplier without any additional cross-border or FX fees. Really, that's giving you the ability to pay almost any supplier, no matter where they sit in the world. It's giving you a lot more leverage and power as an agency. We do have a process called IPR, which is called Intelligent Purchase Routing. And what that means is when you send in details to us, we are going to look at that supplier ID and start to create history. And we're going to realize what card is going to generate the most revenue for you. As Warren said, in the US, it's average 265. But if you have a supplier that they're more cost conscious, and we know that their supplier ID is 123 with your agency, then we'll know we always need to issue a Visa at a lower interchange. What we want to do is maximize the amount of suppliers that are accepting the cards from you as an agency, because in the end, we're going to maximize your revenue earning potential with us when we're doing that. Awesome. Yeah, it's good. All good. We'll go here. Payment types with ConnexPay is quite robust. We do have the ability, obviously, for credit cards and debit cards. We do have Apple Pay and Google Pay capabilities, as well as ACH. This is just helping to maximize the amount of payments you can take in through ConnexPay. On the converse, on our payouts, we do have virtual cards, both Visa and MasterCard, single-use or multi-use cards. We can do physical plastics. We can do lodged cards. What that means is if you have a supplier that you need to send the same 16-digit card number to them every time, we can do that as well. If you have an ability to push funds out to a consumer or on a debit card, we can do that through our push to card. We have mobile wallet capability. So if you need to send a payment to a mobile wallet, we'll have that at the end of this year. We can also do ACH, bank transfers, and global travel VCC, which is our MasterCard wholesale product. Again, one payment stop shop is what ConnexPay is able to offer. All right, next slide, please. All right, so since you guys are not very familiar with virtual cards, based off of the information gathered in the poll, what you may be thinking is this going to work for me? Are my suppliers going to take these virtual cards? You may hear in the industry that airlines are sensitive to accepting virtual cards. It's not so much in the US, it's more prevalent throughout the rest of the world. But rest assured, ConnexPay we're gathering data off of this. In 2022, out of our $10 billion in payments that we issued out, a bulk of that was to airlines. And as you can see on the screen, these are a couple of the top airlines that we paid. But all in all, we've paid over 200 airlines and over $3 billion in payments in 2022. One reason why we see such a high acceptance rate of airlines for ConnexPay's virtual cards is that process of IPR that I just mentioned, our intelligent purchase routing. As you're sending this data through to ConnexPay and through to Sabre, what you're doing is you're passing through the IATA code. So DL for Delta or AA for American. And we're going to know based off of those codes which card to send to those suppliers. Do we send a Visa? Do we send a MasterCard? Do we send a commercial card? Do we send a consumer card? What level of interchange card do we send to them? We're going to do that all on your behalf based off of those codes that you send through to us and through our bin rotation. So as Warren mentioned, if the airlines are looking, it's going to look like a different card. We also pass through the name of the consumer on the card, and we tie their individual address to that card. So when they're performing address verification on the cards based off the data that you push through to the airlines, it's going to match to that individual traveler's name as well as their individual home address. So that's why the acceptance rate of our cards to airlines is so high. I'm proud to say that to date, we've not received any ADMs from any of the airlines to date. And that's pretty impressive, knowing that we pushed through $10 billion in payments last year, with over $3 billion of that into airlines specifically. So rest assured, we are continuously developing and enhancing our product to accept more wide acceptance through airlines throughout the world. Next slide, Warren.
Give me the delay, Erica. I'm scared it's gone too far again.
Yeah, it's okay. I think our next slide after this is just next steps, if I recall correctly. Yep.
There you go. I'll use this.
Yeah. So for any of you agencies that are interested, we'd love for you to reach out so we can understand exactly what it is that you're doing today, what your goals are, and how ConnexPay and Sabre can help you reach those goals. Obviously, we can help generate some extra revenue for you all. So please do reach out, and then we can start the process and conversations on what makes sense for next steps.